Good morning. Happy Monday. Yes, once again, it's Monday. Monday. It was hard to get out of the bed this morning, let me tell you. We were like a straight half hour late to school. Hi, Mara. It is about a half hour after I usually do my live because we were real late, man. That bed just had me hostage. It is Super Monday, isn't it? Ugh. Right? I'm ready for spring. I am over the snow. I am over the cold, fluctuating wetness and iciness. February is always icy in Chicago, so we're supposed to get some sleet and icy rain again today. Anyways, today I would like to talk about the Jupiter in Leo transit of 2015 to 2016. Good morning. And I would like to talk about the eclipses in Aquarius and Leo of 2015 to 2016. Is that right? No, 2015 to 2018. So for the repeat, Jupiter was in Leo 2015 until 2016. And we had eclipses in Aquarius and Leo from 2015 to 2018. So interestingly, also during that same time period, Saturn was in Scorpio from 2015 to 2017. Ooh, my brain is slow. So all of that to say that the Mercury is in Aquarius right now. The sun enters Aquarius tomorrow. Then we have a full moon in Leo next week. All the while Jupiter is in Scorpio. So I'm bringing this up because all of that same fixed sign stuff is being triggered, transited, brought up, progressed, revisited again over the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks, but this is what I'm going to talk about today. So Jupiter in Leo is a really interesting placement. If you notice, that Jupiter in Leo transit coincided with the campaign of Donald Trump. And Jupiter would have been transiting his ascendant and Mars. And whenever you have a Jupiter transit to your Mars, in general, it means that opportunity meets ambition. It is where opportunities arise in your circumstances and environment in order to actualize your ambitions, right? That can be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. It could be a good thing long-term, bad thing short-term, bad thing short-term, good thing long-term. I try to stay away from black and white, good and bad in astrology because life generally isn't that way. If you change one circumstance or event in your life, even the small stuff, you wouldn't be where you are with all of the stuff that you enjoy right now, and you won't be able to get to all of the things that will bring you joy and love and happiness and all of that shigabadang in the future. So anyways, that Jupiter in Leo transit, I feel like his campaign and him and how we responded to that was really indicative of that Jupiter in Leo transit. Jupiter at any given time is highlighting for us how we are interpreting our world around us collectively and culturally. So that when we follow Jupiter's transit, which Jupiter takes about 12 cumulative months, sometimes those months get broken up like it will this year, but Jupiter takes 12 cumulative months to move through one zodiac sign, which means that it takes 1 year to move through the entire zodiac. So every year, basically, Jupiter changes signs and it shifts the cultural trends, the conversation, and it shifts how we are interpreting events around us. So it kind of gives us a context or narrative against which we measure what we are experiencing in our lives and what is happening out in the world in the collective sense. So that when Jupiter was in Leo, remember, this is how sidereal astrology works. Planets are people. Signs point you to planets, so that means signs point you to people. If Jupiter is in Leo, that means Jupiter is pointing you to the sun. That means that the cultural and collective trend and the narrative against which we interpret the events and things that are happening in our lives and in our world are pointing us to the sun, which is men. It is men in positions of power, men of authority, men who, at least at that time, were seeking the position of authority. And the thing about Leo is that Leo is perception itself. Leo, and let me rephrase that, the sun, rather, which is the planet that is in charge of Leo and any planets in Leo, represents the intellect and perception itself. Let's just debunk this real quick. The idea that Leo is vain, the idea that Leo is overly concerned with their appearance, the idea that Leo is overly concerned with the positive opinion of other people is astrologically erroneous and conceptually faulty. Okay? Leo is not dramatic. Leo is not obsessed with their hair. Leo is not prone to flattery. Leo is not dramatic, right? If we want to talk about vanity and appearance and the focus on the opinion of other people, we're really talking about Taurus. We're talking about Taurus as the aesthetic consensus of valuing the opinion of other people because it's a survival strategy. If people like you, they are willing to give you what you want and what you need. If people don't like you, people are likely to withhold from you what you want and what you need. It's very simple, black and white. So, as children, we learn to get people to like us. We learn to get our peers to like us. We learn to conform and to adapt and change our behavior so that our family will like us. We learn to conform and adapt to the family culture and the expectations of how we should behave. We conform to the hierarchies of who has authority and the say-so in our family and home. And then we go and do that out in the world because conforming and assimilating is a survival strategy. When we get to that full moon in Scorpio, which is either in May or June, I can't remember. I think it's at the end of May. We're going to talk more about that. But my whole point in going down that particular line of thought was to explain to you that conceptually it does not make sense for Leo to be the qualities that are associated with vanity, beauty, self-perception in the sense of, in the context of other people and their opinions. That doesn't make sense. It astrologically doesn't make sense. So what is Leo then? If Leo is not drama and flattery, and Leo is not all of these vain things that have to do with, making you feel good about yourself. The sun is perception itself, the faculty of perception. The faculty of perception is the thing that gives sight. It is sight itself, right? So I'm going to give you an example. Right now, I'm thinking of two clients, and there are many other people who were born during this time period who were born in the some people are just intent on being in an accident, and you know what, I'm just gonna let them. There are people who were born in August and September of 1979. Yeah, if you were born in August and September of 1979, more than likely you have Sun, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and I believe the North Node or the South Node, I can't remember, all in Leo, right? I can think of two clients offhand, right? Remember, if planets are people and signs point us to planets, then signs point us to people. For both of these charts I'm thinking of, these are people whose fathers were larger than life figures. right? These people were born in two different parts of the country, different races, different everything. Both fathers were academics, and both fathers were engineers who were very much interested in invention and math and science and ideas, right? Leo is an intellectual sign. Another great example of someone who has prominent Leo in their chart and shows the intellectual nature of Leo is James Baldwin. James Baldwin has both Mercury and the moon in Leo, right? So what we see with these signs is the importance of them using their perceptions, right, their intellect, in order to shape how the world sees something. Why? Because there is a sense of authority of their perceptions being superior. When you have planets in Leo, those planets in Leo are subject to, shaped by the experience of the father for good or ill, okay? So you look at somebody like Donald Trump, who has Leo rising and Mars in Leo, and this person shaped by their father for good or ill, right? Wanting to be their father, having the financial backing, a small loan of $1 million from their father, right? So all of this to say is that when we're talking about this transit of Jupiter and Leo that occurred back in 2015 and 2016, what we were really talking about was how our perceptions and interpretation of the world around us was shaped by men and authority figures. So you can think back in your life and think about the ways in which at that time you may have been struggling with, grappling with, dealing with, benefiting from men in your life, given opportunity by men who sat in positions of authority, right, because of their role as father or leader in some capacity. But also because the eclipses were in Leo and Aquarius at that time, another backdrop or conversation that we were dealing with was really figuring out how much of our authority we were willingly going to subject to authority figures outside of us, and where and how we would remain sovereign over ourselves, over our bodies, over our minds, and over our perception itself. So why I'm talking about this is because anytime we have these fixed sign transits that are ongoing, or even just a blip in the radar, they're always going to echo back to these major time periods that there was a lot of activity in those signs. So if the sun enters Aquarius tomorrow, Jupiter is in Leo, Jupiter is in Scorpio, Mercury is still in Aquarius, then we're going to have a full moon in Leo. It's really important that we think back to that time period and the lessons that we learned. What things were you establishing under the reign of your own intellect? What ideas were you propagating? And how were those ideas in conflict with or supported by the men and authority figures in your life, right? A lot of times when we have Leo by transit, or we have Leo in our natal charts, there's this sense of asking for permission from authority, right? Or benefiting from authority in some way, or needing proximity to authority in some way, shape, or form, and that benefiting us. But when we come to Aquarius transits, Aquarius is the anti-patriarchy sign, and not because it is eccentric or crazy or rebellious or wears purple hair or wants to be kumbaya. That is not Aquarius at all. Aquarius is not humanitarian. Aquarius does not care about other people. The whole point of Aquarius is that I am able to observe my own perception. I am able to detach, find language, have symbols, in some way be able to observe my mind and observe what are the things and who are the people that shape my perception. And ultimately, I have dominion over my own mind. I can shape my own perception, and I'm not subject to the faculty of perception itself. This is really kind of deep and philosophical, and I've been looking for language to make this a little bit more easy to explain. But the whole point is that the air signs are what make humans human. The whole point of air signs is that we can conceptualize, perceive, and objectify ourselves, which means that we are not subject to instinct all the time. When you're subject to instinct all the time, your body and your mind are connected in a way where if you have the urge or impulse to do something, you cannot talk yourself out of it. When your fight or flight instinct goes into effect, you can't look at your body and be like, body, you're not really in danger. There's nothing here that's scaring you. It's okay. Be still. Just relax. Take some deep breaths. Sing a song, something. That's air. Air is what allows you to observe instinct instead of embody and be instinct. So Aquarius talks about how we can override inherent hierarchies of authority as a social means, right? I watched last week, as we're talking about fixed signs and Aquarius and all that stuff, I watched Friday, I watched the Sam Cooke documentary on Netflix. And whenever I watch documentaries, I love to look at people's birth charts and follow along with the narrative of their life. And I really learned so much about astrology this way. So Sam Cooke was really very, very interesting. He's Taurus rising with Moon in Aquarius in the 10th house. Now these two signs, Taurus and Aquarius, are square each other because Taurus is talking about the aesthetic consensus. It is talking about conforming to the expectations of your social designation. If you are black, if you are male, if it is in this socio-political and economic climate, what are the expectations of your role in your family? What are the expectations of how you make a living? What are the expectations of how you behave in relationship to other people, in relationship to white people, in relationship to white men, right? So Taurus talks to us about the ways that we conform to the expectations of what our social designation has, what the social designation that has been given to us. But for Sam Cooke, he had that Taurus rising, and that really showed his crossover appeal. And by crossover, that literally means you are able to navigate different environments, different social atmospheres, different social hierarchies. He was able to be in the white world of the music industry and be accepted by white people, but he was also able to run the Chitlin circuit and still maintain a sense of authenticity that black people never really felt that he sold out. He always stayed connected to his roots. And that's because Taurus is very, very, very good at understanding that who I am is not necessarily a reflection of how I behave or how I dress. How I behave and how my dress is a tool, and it's a role that I play. It's not necessarily who I am. But the Aquarius is always going to offer a contradiction and a challenge to that Taurus, because Aquarius is saying, actually, I don't have to identify myself and see myself and perceive myself through the lens of my social designation. If you name me black, right? If you call me black, and implied in that blackness and being called black is a whole social hierarchy, expectation, narrative about who I am and what I can be. Aquarius says, no, I'm self-determined. I get to say who I am and what I am. So one of the things that I learned in this documentary about Sam Cooke was that right before his death, he had, first of all, he was really young anyway. He was only 34 when he died. But in the couple of years prior to his death, he had reached a level of fame and prominence in his life that afforded him the opportunity to start his own record label and publishing company. And you have to remember, this is in the 1960s, right? Motown was really just barely taking off. So the idea that black people could own their own, right, was novel and a threat to the power structures and the social expectations for black people. So after he had started his own label and all of this stuff, he decided that he was going to pull together James Brown, Wilson Pickett, I believe, and some other people in order to create their own record label, publishing company, and booking agency. And literally, this is not made up. Because of the white power structure at the time, the mob was very, very involved in the music industry. So he constantly had Italian mob folks showing up at his shows, in his dress room, at his home, in his office, telling him that he needs to watch out for what he's doing. He needs to not be trying to upset the existing hierarchy in the music industry, which basically meant that black people wrote music and white people stole it, right? That black people performed and made records, and they did not make any money off of it. You know, they were very heavily touring artists, and that's how they made their money. They didn't get any publishing. They didn't own their masters or anything like that. So he was really a threat. Now we look back on that now and say, oh, well, we got Jay-Z and Michael Jackson and Diddy and all of these other men. But Sam Cooke is really the one who established the precedent for black people owning their own music, owning their own rights, and having their own labels and publishing and all of those things. So there's a lot of conspiracies about how he died and why he died that could very well be related to that. But my whole point is that when we talk about Aquarius, we are talking about self-determination, and there is no better example and embodiment of that than the Black Power movement, than the Civil Rights movement, than Black Lives Matter, Black is Beautiful, all of these things that are really a direct contrast meant to upend the existing hierarchy in our culture. So when we talk about these signs, it's very cultural, right? We can't go and say Black is beautiful in the south of India, for example, where it's just not culturally relevant, right? So there are other ways that Aquarius is going to manifest historically and over time in different cultures. But in America, the self-determination of Black people is very representative of Aquarius. So all of that to say that, you know, during that 2015-16 time, when we were having eclipses and there were all of these state-sanctioned shootings and killings of Black children and women and boys, that this new updated movement of Black self-determination, of we get to name who we are for ourselves, by ourselves. So all of that to say, whenever I pull up to my house, you know we have to wrap up the sermon. All of that to say, as we're going through these Aquarius transits over the next few weeks, Mercury is going to spend part of its retrograde in Aquarius in March. I want you to think about the ways that you are self-determined in your life. In what ways do you reject the expectations of your social designation? And how are you naming yourself? How are you embodying an authority over yourself? One of the other words that I love to use for Aquarius, that I believe Rihanna and for a time Erykah Badu really embodied, in this idea of self-possession. And self-possession literally means I have dominion over myself, that I don't need to ask for permission, that my self-concept, the way that I perceive myself, is not in relationship to my status. It's not in relationship to any hierarchy, and it's not in relationship to anybody else, right? My sense of self, my authority over myself, my ability to possess myself. I mean, this is really, I keep going back to this, but this is really a radical idea for Black people still in 2019. The idea that I own my own labor, the idea that I own my own body, that I own my own sexuality, that I own my hair, that I own my lips, that I can do with them as I please. This is why seeing people like Cardi B is so revolutionary for Black people, because she is self-possessed. Who she is and the makings of who she is not due to any man. Who Rihanna is and the success that she's had, who Erykah Badu is, these people don't have any man to say, yes, I shaped you, I molded you, I gave you this and that, right? So in what ways are you moving through your life and not asking for permission? Not because you're rebelling, sorry about that. In what ways am I moving through my life and making decisions because I own myself? And at least in this particular area of my life, I get to say who I am. I get to say what I am. I get to shape my perception of myself in my own mind, in my own language, in my own way. Yeah, so that's that. On that, hopefully, as soon as I get in the house, I will be able to upload this to YouTube, and you can watch it. If you missed the beginning, you can watch it again. If I gave you a whole lot of information that was too much and you can take notes, it will be available. You guys have a great Monday. Where's the moon today? It's in Aries. Yesterday, it was triggering all that Mars in Aries stuff. How fun. Bye.